destroying the destroyers of the earth.
Well, hey guys, David here. Snollygoster, another episode. Well, I wanted to talk about something that I think makes a lot of sense. I don't want to, I'm not making this video to shit on the boomer generation, but I want to clear a few things up. So, a lot of people, especially where I live in the South, are Christian. And when I get in conversations with people and they find out that I'm an atheist, it just blows their mind. But I would have to say the reason why I am an atheist is because I was brought up by boomer parents. We were Southern Baptists, but we went to Pentecostal churches, we went to Church of Christ, I've been to Lutheran churches, all these different ones. And the thing that people don't understand is why you grow up to be an atheist is because, first of all, as you grow older and you learn a lot of things, it's kind of like stop believing in Santa Claus. You know, you grow up, you quit believing in Santa Claus, same reason you quit believing in God. It's not because anybody died. That's what they always think. Oh, well, somebody must have died and you're hurt and you are angry at God. No, it doesn't make any sense. I always say that the Bible in Genesis should start off not in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, but it should start once upon a time God created the heavens and the earth. Because if you went to a foreign country, you went to Africa or some tribe, and you read them the story of Jonah in the big fish, or the woman who lived in the shoe and had so many kids she didn't know what to do, they would think that both stories, by their absurdity, are in the same book. But getting back, and this is not just my parents. This is all my friends' parents, everybody that I knew growing up, and everything I witnessed as a child. So the reason I'm an atheist is because I was raised by the boomer generation. And my family's pounded into my head God and Christianity, but they never lived it. You know, my own family, my father, throughout my lifetime was married and divorced 3 times. My mom twice. My dad was a huge alcoholic, drank all the time. My parents fought constantly. They didn't live what they supposedly preached. And it wasn't just my family. All of my friends' families were the same way. I can't think of a friend whose parents aren't divorced that I'm still in contact with today. They were all divorced. I was at their houses. I spent the night. I seen how their fathers drank on the weekend and watched football and got drunk out their ass and got into arguments with their moms. You know, I seen how people acted. And people say, oh, well, we're just all fallen. It's just, we're sinful. People will say, well, we're just all fallen. We're just sinful. But that concept never made any sense to me. And it's kind of funny when you talk about the Bible and how, because of Adam and Eve, original sin and all that, and it's passed on to generation. And then I listen to a lot of talk radio and I hear people talking about slavery. And they're like, well, I don't own slaves. Why am I being blamed for slaves? Well, yeah, because that's human nature. None of us that are alive today ever owned slaves. So we're like, that was a horrible thing. We need to do better, but you can't hold me accountable for what my ancestors did. But why can God hold you accountable? I heard a preacher I was watching on YouTube say one time, when he was questioned about how God just indiscriminately murdered people left and right, slayed everybody, whenever things didn't go his way, or he had his people go and kill people. And this preacher said, well, since we're all God's children and he created us, he has the right to kill us at any time he wants. It's like that old axiom, like my dad, he used to say that all the time. I brought you into this world and I can take you out. Well, using that same logic, I'm a father. So doesn't that mean I own my children so that I can do whatever I want with them? I can beat them, I can kill them, I can rape them. According to that logic, since I brought my kids into this world, and I guess I can take them out anytime I want to. But of course, in our society today, we would be like, no, you can't do that. Your child has a right to live. They have a right to not be beaten, not to be molested, to be taken care of. But why can God do it? Because shouldn't God be the example? Not the, it's just, I don't know, it's hard to put into words that people that live in 2020 can still believe in this old age bull crap. One of the things that I think is the most funny thing, and I'm not even getting back to the I'm not going to talk about the creation, how it's all jacked up. There was plants before the sun and all that. We all know that. But the thing that I think is funny is, why did God put a tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden in the first place? Because he's God. He knows everything. He can see the future. And I want to use this metaphor or this example. Adam and Eve were like children. They didn't know the difference between good and evil. They didn't know they were naked. So let's take 2 one-year-old babies and let's put them in a room. And in the middle of the room, let's put a big, nice 3-layer, beautiful, icing-covered, delectable, tasty cake. And then tell those babies, those 1-year-olds, hey guys, if you eat of that cake or you mess with it or touch it, then I'm going to kill you. And then walk out of the room. I bet you $1 million those babies will be in that cake in about 30 seconds. That's the same logic when it comes to Adam and Eve. And the funny thing about that story also is the snake is the only one that told the truth. God said you would die. He said all of these lies. The snake told the truth. He said, no, you won't die. You'll become as God, knowing good from evil. And the snake was right. So just it's a ridiculous story, and I don't see how people in 2020 can believe this. And one other thing that I'd like to talk about is when we come to Noah's Ark. Now, I know when it comes to the story of Noah, everybody talks about the boat and the size of the boat and the size of the animal and what's the difference between kinds and all of that. But I don't even want to talk about that. There's 2 passages where it talks about that story. And the first thing that I want to say is where God says that he has regret that he created man. How can a perfect being who knows everything have regret? Shouldn't he have known that men were going to fall? But getting away from that, because people argue and there'll be all kinds of apologists. I've heard apologists talk about this, and it's just ridiculous. The excuses they make for God in the Bible. But the one thing is that I wanted to talk about is when he's talking to Noah and he says, all of bring into the ark everything that has the breath of life in it, because I'm going to kill everything on earth that has the breath of life. This right here, that I've never heard anybody really talk about this, proves that this story was written by unintelligent desert nomads. So they believe that the breath of life is breathing, breathing. Because when you die, you don't breathe anymore. So the breath of life is breathing. So by flooding the earth, he's killing all the land animals and the humans that have the breath of life in them. But fish, I guess, either fish are not sinful, or fish, according to God, don't have the breath of life in them, even though they clearly breathe and have gills anyway. But what about whales and dolphins? Whales and dolphins have the breath of life in them. They breathe air just like land animals. They give birth to live young. Whoops, forgot about those. So did Noah put whales and dolphins on the ark as well? Because according to God, everything that has the breath of life in it will die. Nobody ever talks about the whales and the dolphins. I like to go to the Ark thing in Kentucky and see if they have whales and dolphins, because they have the breath of life in them. But anyway, this is all the nonsense that I was pumped full in my entire life from my boomer parents, who were just people. They're not perfect, but I learned from the mistakes that they made. They had kids when they were in their late teens, early 20s. I didn't become a dad till I was 38, after I had my career going and I enjoyed my life and I partied all I wanted to, and then now I'm done. I don't need to go partying anymore, and I don't care about drinking. So I had my child when I was ready, so that I could be a good dad. I didn't have to run out to the bar and get drunk every weekend and chase skirts even though I'm married. And, and I learned from seeing my parents fight in front of me. Me and my wife don't do that. We had a pool when I was a kid, and when I was in the 8th grade, I brought over a friend of mine who was Hispanic. He had long hair, and we were gonna go swimming. And my dad was like, "What the hell is that kid doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is my friend Angel. We were gonna go swimming." And my dad's like, "He ain't going in my pool." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, he's Mexican." I'm like, "Yeah?" And he's like, "Well, he's got long hair." And I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with long hair?" He's like, "Well, long hair means you're a hoodlum, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Well, didn't Jesus have long hair in the Bible?" And my dad actually said, he's a big time apologist, "No, Jesus was clean cut." I was like, "Oh, well, according to all them pictures hanging up on the walls of the church, he was long hair and had a big beard and he was a big hippie." And my friend Angel ended up leaving. He got embarrassed, I got embarrassed, and he left. And the reason why I'm not that way, while I support all people, is because that was my boomer raising generation that raised me. Intolerance, fear. My dad was all about guns and the government and all of this stuff. And I remember he was so proud that he wouldn't take, food or, help from the government, that one winter time, it was Christmas, and we were living in a trailer house, and he couldn't afford to put butane to heat our trailer. And it got so cold at our house, then when we woke up, the water in the toilet bowl was actually frozen. So all of his and all of their holier than thou nonsense talk didn't fix anything. It was filled with depression, with suicide attempts, with medication for depression, with alcohol, with self-medication, with drugs. That's what it's like being raised by a boomer. These people with all of these mental issues. So I chose not to be that way. So I'm not like my parents. And I'm thankful for that. I'm glad I'm not a boomer. Okay, boomer. This is David Zoe Zizzles. Take it easy.